All right, today we're taking our deep dive across the globe.
Ooh, exciting.
We're going to explore retiring in Malaysia,
I love it.
based on a YouTube interview with an American expat who actually made the leap, Andrew Taylor.
Sounds fascinating.
He's 69 years old now and moved from Florida to Malaysia about 8 years ago.
Wow, Florida to Malaysia, that's quite a change.
Right. And he's happily retired there.
Happily retired. Okay, got to hear more about this.
Exactly. So we're going to uncover what surprised him most about life over there, what it's really like day to day.
The nitty gritty.
Yeah. And ultimately, see if maybe this could be your retirement dream too.
Yeah, we're talking.
We'll also get into the practical stuff like the cost of living, how Andrew manages his finances, and even some of the challenges he's run into.
Got to keep it real, right?
Absolutely. Okay, so right off the bat, Andrew mentions that a lot of Americans, when they think about Malaysia, they picture it as this strict Muslim country.
Yeah, I can see that.
But he really wants to debunk that stereotype.
Oh, good,
And
because it's important to get the facts straight.
Exactly. He emphasizes that Malaysia is actually a secular country with religious freedom.
That's a key distinction.
Yeah, he says that's actually where he gets the most pushback.
Really?
When he tells people he lives in Malaysia, they're like, why would you choose to live in a place like that based on these assumptions?
Wow, the power of preconceived notions.
It's pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
He actually encourages people to visit and see for themselves.
Always good advice.
He says the reality is just so different from those stereotypes.
I bet. So is there anything else that surprised him about the differences between American and Malaysian culture?
That's actually a great segue because he talks about this difference in mentality,
Okay.
specifically when it comes to like trusting the government.
Oh, interesting.
He gives a great example using the COVID restrictions.
Oh, okay.
He said in Malaysia, people mostly complied. Maybe there was some grumbling, but by and large, everyone followed the rules. But he believes if those same restrictions had happened in the U.S., there would have been riots.
Wow, that's a pretty stark contrast.
It is, right?
So what does he attribute that to?
He's not entirely sure, but he thinks Malaysians maybe are either more trusting of their government,
Okay.
or maybe they just inherently understand that those restrictions were the right thing to do in that situation.
Interesting.
Yeah,
It makes you think, right?
it does. So we've debunked one stereotype. We've uncovered a pretty different mindset. What else stood out to you?
Well, Andrew talks a lot about the kindness and generosity he's experienced in Malaysia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he describes the people as incredibly friendly and helpful, always willing to lend a hand.
He tells this amazing story, actually,
Oh, I'm listening.
about a complete stranger inviting him to an open house.
What?
They were driving past his place and just decided to stop and invite him.
No way. That's so cool.
It's such a great example of the sense of community he's found there.
Definitely not something you'd expect coming from a more individualistic culture like the U.S.
I think that's a huge draw for a lot of people considering retirement.
Oh, absolutely.
That feeling of belonging, that connection, it's so important.
It's crucial, especially in retirement when you have more time to actually nurture those connections.
Exactly. And speaking of unexpected things, we have to mention Andrew's YouTube success.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
His channel got monetized in just 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
And he was only using his phone to film.
Wow, that's impressive.
It really is. It's pretty wild.
Talk about a side hustle in retirement.
Right. It's this inspiring example of how someone can share their experiences and potentially even generate some income while living abroad.
Exactly. It shows you the possibilities when you step outside your comfort zone.
Okay, so friendly culture, potential income streams.
Sounds pretty good so far.
Right. But let's talk about the big one for most retirees, the cost of living.
Ah, yes. That's always a key factor.
And this is where things get really interesting because Malaysia is incredibly affordable.
Okay, how affordable are we talking?
Compared to the U.S., it's a night and day difference.
Give us some examples, some hard numbers.
So Andrew actually owns a condo in Florida,
Oh, okay.
but the condo fees there are higher than what he pays in rent for a spacious apartment in Malaysia.
That's wild. So he's actually saving money by living abroad.
Yeah. And when you consider that many retirees are on fixed incomes, that kind of savings can be huge.
Absolutely. It can drastically improve their quality of life.
He even estimates that a comfortable retirement in Penang, Malaysia,
Okay.
is doable for a couple on about $2,500 a month.
Wow, that's a far cry from what you'd need in many parts of the U.S. these days.
For sure. So how does Andrew actually afford this lifestyle?
Spill the beans.
Well, he uses his Social Security income.
Okay, makes sense.
And also, he gets rental income from that Florida condo.
Smart move.
Right. And here's the key detail. His Social Security payments are under $2,000 per month.
Under $2,000 a month?
Yep.
That really puts things in perspective.
It shows how far that money can stretch in Malaysia.
It does. Now, I'm sure some people listening are wondering about the whole culture shock thing.
Yeah, especially going back and forth between such different places.
Right. How does he handle that?
Well, Andrew talks about how he always feels like he's going home whenever he visits Florida.
Oh, that's sweet.
But he also noticed something interesting.
Okay, what's that?
He feels like the media's portrayal of the U.S., all the negativity, it doesn't always match his actual experience when he's there.
Interesting.
He says when he's in the U.S., things feel pretty normal.
Right.
It's not this constant battle with everyone like the news sometimes makes it seem.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's easy to get caught up in the media narrative and forget that real life is often much more nuanced.
Exactly. It's important to form our own perspectives.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's get down to brass tacks.
Let's do it.
Why Malaysia? Why did he decide to leave the U.S. and retire there?
The million-dollar question?
It was a combination of things.
Okay.
He found love in Penang,
Ah, that's lovely.
and he realized he could comfortably retire at 60.
At 60, that's practically unheard of in the U.S. these days.
I know, right? Most Americans can only dream of retiring that early.
It highlights a kind of sad reality.
It does.
That for many, retirement isn't just about choosing where to live. It's about whether they can even afford to retire at all.
That's a huge point.
Yeah.
It's more than just a change of scenery for Andrew. It's a whole lifestyle shift.
Absolutely. And speaking of lifestyle, Andrew actually says his quality of life has improved since retiring to Malaysia.
Really?
Yeah. He even says, I have a better lifestyle here in retirement than I had in the U.S. when I was working.
Wow, that's a powerful statement.
It really challenges the idea that retirement has to mean downsizing or giving things up.
Right.
For Andrew, it's been the opposite.
It's pretty amazing, right? It shows that maybe retirement can be an upgrade.
Totally. It's a refreshing perspective on what retirement can actually look like.
Okay, so it can't all be sunshine and roses.
Well, no place is perfect.
Right.
What are some of the downsides Andrew mentioned?
He does point out that traffic is a major annoyance in Malaysia.
Ah, yes, the joys of city living.
And he also finds that Malaysians' adherence to rules can be frustrating sometimes.
Oh, interesting.
So, it's important to be realistic.
For sure.
Every place has its drawbacks. Malaysia's no exception.
It's about weighing those downsides against the positives and figuring out what matters most to you.
Right. What are your non-negotiables?
Exactly. Now, a lot of people think about Thailand as a retirement destination.
Oh, yeah. Very popular.
So why Malaysia? What made Andrew choose Malaysia over a place like Thailand?
He had a few reasons.
Okay.
He prefers the infrastructure in Penang
Okay.
and the fact that English is more widely spoken there.
Makes sense.
Plus, he just felt a stronger connection to the Malaysian culture.
Ah, so personal preference plays a big role.
It really does. It's all about finding the right fit for you.
Absolutely.
Beyond all the practical stuff, Andrew shares something really profound about his personal philosophy.
Oh, I love when people get philosophical.
It gives you a glimpse into the values that led him down this unconventional path.
I'm all ears.
He really emphasizes the inherent worth and dignity of every person.
That's beautiful.
Isn't it? It speaks to a deep respect for humanity.
It does. Makes you wonder if that outlook is part of what drew him to Malaysia, a place where different cultures and religions coexist so peacefully.
That's a great point. It makes you think about how our values shape our choices.
Yeah.
Even in retirement. Yeah, it's almost like he's living a completely different reality than what we're often told about retirement here in the U.S.
Right. It really makes you question those assumptions.
So much of the talk about retirement in the U.S. is about downsizing.
Cutting back, making do.
Yeah, and for Andrew, it seems like retirement has actually been an expansion of his life.
Totally. He's living proof that retirement doesn't have to mean giving up things you enjoy.
Like he said, his lifestyle now is better than when he was working in the U.S.
It's a pretty amazing thought, isn't it?
It is. It really challenges that whole narrative
Yeah.
of retirement equaling decline or sacrifice.
For sure. But it's important to acknowledge that Malaysia, like any country,
Of course.
has its complexities.
Right.
We don't want to paint an overly rosy picture here.
Absolutely. There are always broader factors to consider.
Beyond just individual experiences.
For example, Malaysia has dealt with issues like political corruption.
Yeah, and economic inequality, racial tensions.
These are all things that anyone thinking about moving there should be aware of.
Absolutely. And it's crucial to remember that Andrew's story, while incredibly insightful, it's just one perspective.
Right.
other expats might have totally different experiences.
That's a good point.
So it's essential to gather information from a variety of sources.
Do your homework?
Exactly. Don't rely solely on anecdotes or marketing materials.
Right.
Dig deeper, explore those different viewpoints, and really weigh the potential risks and rewards.
Make an informed choice.
Precisely. Speaking of informed choices, you know that affordability that Andrew mentioned?
Yeah, that $2,500 a month.
Right. How does that compare to other popular retirement destinations? Could you find even lower costs in other Southeast Asian countries, like Thailand or Vietnam?
That's a great question.
Because it's tempting to think, oh, if Malaysia's that cheap, imagine how cheap Thailand must be.
Right.
But remember, each country has its own unique set of advantages and disadvantages.
For sure.
You might encounter language barriers in other countries.
Yeah.
Cultural differences that are more difficult to navigate.
Different healthcare systems.
Exactly. Different infrastructure.
So, it's a trade-off.
Always is.
You can find super low costs, but those downsides might end up being deal breakers.
Precisely. It's all about striking that balance.
Right.
So when making this decision, I always recommend starting with your priorities.
Okay.
What are your non-negotiables for retirement? What aspects of your lifestyle are most important to you?
Yeah, for some people, access to quality healthcare is a top priority.
Makes sense.
Others might value proximity to family and friends.
Right.
Or maybe having a vibrant cultural scene is a must-have.
It all boils down to personal needs and preferences.
Exactly.
Once you've identified those must-haves, then you can start researching different locations and comparing them based on those specific factors.
And don't forget to factor in potential future costs.
Oh, absolutely. Crucial point.
Like healthcare expenses or inflation.
Retirement planning is a long game.
It is.
You have to think about the sustainability of your chosen location over time.
Okay, so we've talked about research, setting priorities, and considering long-term sustainability. Any other advice for people exploring the idea of retiring abroad?
I think it's important to embrace the adventure of it all.
Yeah, no.
Exactly. Moving to a new country, especially in retirement.
Can be daunting.
It can be, but it can also be incredibly enriching.
Stepping outside that comfort zone.
Right. Experiencing a different culture, making new memories.
That's what it's all about.
It is. And don't hesitate to ask for help along the way.
Yeah, there are so many resources out there.
Tons of resources for expats.
Online forums, local support groups.
Reaching out to people like Andrew who've already made the move.
Exactly.
They can offer invaluable insights and advice based on their own experiences.
That firsthand perspective is so helpful.
It is. Sharing those experiences, learning from others who have walked a similar path.
It can make the transition so much smoother.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. The pros and cons of retiring in Malaysia.
The importance of doing your research, making a plan.
We've also seen how one person's story can really challenge our assumptions about retirement.
And inspire us to think outside the box.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, the decision of where and how to retire, it's deeply personal.
It is.
There's no one right answer.
Right. It's about finding what aligns with your individual values, aspirations.
And financial situation.
Exactly. So if you're thinking about retiring abroad, whether it's Malaysia or somewhere else,
take that time to explore your options, weigh those pros and cons.
And most importantly,
listen to your gut.
Trust your instincts.
Because retirement isn't just about where you live.
Right.
It's about how you choose to live your life.
It's about pursuing your passions, connecting with others.
Making the most of this new chapter.
Maybe you'll find yourself enjoying a delicious teh tarik in a bustling Malaysian market.
Living that well-planned retirement dream.
Or maybe you'll discover a hidden gem in a completely different part of the world.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah, it's really amazing how he's kind of flipped the script on retirement,
Right, it doesn't have to be this downward trajectory.
He's actually thriving.
It's inspiring.
It really is. Makes you realize there's no one-size-fits-all approach to this whole retirement thing.
Exactly. And it all comes back to what we've been talking about, figuring out your priorities.
Yeah, what truly matters to you.
Do you want adventure? Do you want cultural immersion? Is financial freedom your top priority?
Once you pinpoint those things, then you can start exploring options that really resonate.
Maybe that's Malaysia. Maybe it's somewhere else entirely.
The key is to be open, right?
Yeah, challenge those assumptions about what retirement should be.
Andrew's story shows us that you don't have to settle.
You can actually create a retirement that feels like an upgrade.
An upgrade. I love that.
And that upgrade could mean so many different things.
A change of scenery, new experiences, or even just a shift in perspective.
It's about finding what brings you joy and fulfillment in this new chapter.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into retiring in Malaysia,
Uh-huh.
let's shift the focus back to you listening.
What really stood out for you in Andrew's story?
Did the affordability catch your attention?
Or the idea of immersing yourself in a new culture?
Maybe it was that sense of community he talked about.
Or perhaps the courage to just reinvent yourself in a whole new environment?
Whatever it was, we hope Andrew's experience has got you thinking a little differently about your own retirement journey.
Yeah, to explore those what-ifs, those possibilities you might not have considered before.
Because retirement isn't just an ending, right?
It's a new beginning.
A chance to write a whole new chapter filled with purpose, passion, and maybe even a few adventures.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and keep living life to the fullest.